Gene, thank you for joining us on Journey Map today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, Dave. Yeah.
So we've known each other for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there are things that I remember from our initial connections. You know, we'd be on, it was pandemic time. We'd be on Zoom waiting for CEO to show up or whatever, and shooting the shit a little bit. And you are an endurance athlete. So you biked here today.
I did.
When did this start? I promise you this will tie back together at some point.
Good.
But when did you really find this passion for biking? And I'm assuming you do ultras. Is this like...
Yeah, ultra cycling distances. And I did dabble a bit with ultra running, but never really stuck with that. I prefer the ultra cycling.
And when did this start? Is this like a lifelong passion?
So... Wow, it's like that's one of those questions that you can open up the box, right?
Well, that's what we're here to do.
And get into some pretty nasty stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, my household was chaotic, like really, really chaotic, and I just found that escaping on my bike, like in the woods for hours, was a really good way to find peace and calm and find my own space where I could feel safe. And I never knew what I was coming home to, right? So I didn't realize it at the time that I was like building this passion for moving my body, and moving my body ended up kind of equating to some mental health, stability, and getting a lot of benefits from moving my body from a mental health perspective. And in turn, I ended up just developing this passion for being on a bike. Whenever I feel stressed, whenever I'm tired, whenever I'm feeling like I can't figure something out, like I gravitate towards going for a bike ride or doing something on the endurance sports front, because it helps regulate all sorts of things, regulates the body, regulates the mind. And then eventually through cycling, I discovered a community outside of my home that I think became my second family.
Right.
And that second family more or less embraced me, and it became sort of the rock for me as a late teenager. Racing bikes, working in a bike shop, making really close friends that I'm still in touch with today, that mean a lot more to me than some of the other relationships I had growing up as a kid. I mean, I'm still close with my family, but I think we all dealt with the chaos in our own respective ways. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So you had cycling amidst the chaos. You're presented as a bit of an overachiever. Let's put it that way. Hence being on our show.
Right.
But so despite that chaos, was it school? Was it being adapted, creating solid social relationships, sports outside of cycling? Like what were your the things that you kind of remember from your childhood that you can kind of hang your hat on, or like what were the pillars of Gene growing up?
Like for me, it was like this dogged sort of determinism to distance myself as much as possible from this chaotic culture. And I think really, really early on in my life, I realized, okay, my family doesn't have a lot of money, and I needed to kind of chart my own path, because if there's something I wanted, I was going to have to work for it myself. Not that they didn't want to give it to me, they just didn't have the economic means. So I had to chart my own path towards that. And anything I've ever wanted, my wife says I'm really too independent. I don't ask enough for help. I just go get it, and then just build a path or a chart or a journey towards getting that thing that I want. But I wouldn't say the things that I want are domineering or greedy. It's just like, I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to get to a certain level within my career. I wanted to have a family, a wife, kids, a house that's paid for, those kinds of things. So it wasn't like massive goals.
Just a vision for a different circumstance.
Exactly.
What you grew up. Yeah. And so when was the first time, because obviously we're going to go down a path of some real sales prowess and leadership with where you've gone in your career. What was the first moment you remember selling something or selling yourself or?
Ooh, yeah. Probably like way back to my teenage years. I've never really seen myself as a seller. I've seen myself more as somebody helping somebody who's got a problem discover a solution, and then helping them choose the right solution to help them get through that problem. So back when I was a teenager, I think the first job I had that I absolutely loved was being in a bike store and then helping people who they had a problem. They didn't have a bike and they wanted to get a bicycle because they needed to get around. Or they wanted to go explore and enjoy nature or the Gatineau Park or whatever. So helping them find the right solution. And I think the way I always approached it was more around like a solution selling. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. It's more, okay, well, what do you do? What kind of riding you want to do? So you're just kind of asking them all the discovery things that you need to do, right? Like, how much do you want to ride? Where do you want to go? What's your vision for cycling? Then you're matching that set of requirements to an opportunity or to a solution. I didn't know it at the time, but I was building a lot of these, I think, these baseline grassroots skills of the discipline for sales. And then through university, and then once I was actually in a high-tech milieu working for Cognos, I don't actually think I was sales driven. Like I wasn't like, let's make that number. Let's make this deal. It was always like, what's the value that we could provide at the customer? And if we could provide that right value, they will separate with their money for that solution, right? So that's what I was always driven by.
Well, and those first roles that you had, they weren't sales roles.
No, they weren't.
Product management, marketing.
Exactly, yeah.
So how did you find yourself? You mentioned Cognos in the early 90s, the heyday of Cognos.
Yeah.
My father also worked at Cognos around that time.
Okay.
Funny enough, as a software developer. But how did you stumble into these kinds of marketing positions? You have a degree in commerce, but getting in and focusing in on the marketing side, was that just because the job was available?
Well,
was it passion?
Well, it was kind of thing where if I worked at a bike shop as a mechanic and a bike seller until I guess third year university, then I realized, okay, well, I'm going to need to pivot outside of the bike industry in order for me to grow the career that I needed to grow. And back in, it was 92, 93, the personal computer was becoming more common. It was like not everybody had a personal computer back in that day. So I said, look, I'm going to go buy one and learn as much as possible about personal computing. So, and ended up leaving the bike industry, and I got a job for the University of Ottawa. Believe it or not, just a shipping receiving guy in their computer department. And I did that for fourth year university and just like steep myself within the computing and communications, I guess, network or industry. And through that, I ended up making connections with different people at Cognos and different people at other local organizations. And they saw that I had this curiosity and aptitude for learning software technology in addition to core sort of business skills. So I saw this change happening in the market. Not that it has any sort of clairvoyance that I was like this visionary. It's more like, working on bikes might be $25 an hour at max. Whereas, working on computers could be like, $80K a year.
Well, I think there's just like a through line there, which is that finding something you're somewhat passionate about, and then, putting yourself in the position to learn more about it and to embrace the passion and then professionalize it.
Exactly.
If you will. Yeah. In those early days, early 90s Cognos, like heyday. What was something you remember from back then that really has stuck with you through your career since?
Ooh.
A lesson learned, a piece of advice from a mentor?
Well, I think that I'd say those are like the formative years, right? Where like I had the business degree, but I really think I didn't really know anything until those first 4 or 5 years working for Cognos because of all the different roles I had. And I mean, a couple of things, right? So think of different roles like marketing, alliances, sales, product management. Ultimately, all of these roles exist to help solve a customer's problem. And if you're in marketing, your role is help sales sell, right? And I kind of learned that early in my career that, in order for me to be different and to add value and to be valued within the organization, if I wasn't helping the organization sell, then why am I there, right? Yeah. So I think that's the number one thing. Like no matter what role you're in, if you're not helping the organization deliver on that value for the end customer, and helping grease the wheels for sales, then you're not doing the right role,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think one of the other things
You're
too.
either making the thing, selling this thing, or supporting the
Exactly,
thing.
right.
If you don't know which of those 3 buckets you fit into, it
Yeah,
might be a problem.
that's right. Yeah, you stole the words out of my mouth. That's what I was going to get to. Is like, no matter what role you are in a business, you're supporting and delivering value to a customer at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It would seem like something that has changed in the tech software industry since the early 90s is like, again, some of your roles, I get to cheat because I did the research on you, but some of these roles you've had, they are this kind of combination of product marketing or product management and marketing. Whereas nowadays, one thing we struggle, even when we're hiring or reviewing the resume of a new grad, marketing 101, like 4P marketing, you have product in there, and it's actually part of, to me, the bedrock of what marketing is. And today those responsibilities have just been often completely stripped from each other, where the person who's making product decisions is not the person who has to go and then try to sell that. Do you feel like those coming up during the time that you did and having these positions that you did, now as someone who's a pretty seasoned CRO, I'm assuming you're able to kind of have apathy and understanding for product development cycles, the role of product market fit, like these kinds of things. And I just wondering if you could comment on your experience of seeing how some of that, I have my view, but like how have you seen those roles kind of either stay connected or get pulled apart?
There are things like you've heard of product-led growth, right? Where like the product itself helps handhold a customer or buyer through a journey. And with more and more products like that, even in B2B, especially B2C, the act of selling is hardwired into the product. So product teams today in those kinds of services almost need to be hardwired around looking at like the metrics and like how do they grease the wheels, reduce friction, make it as easy as possible for somebody to get the value out of the feature and of the product, and how to get them to buy more and stay sticky and use the product more. So I actually see nowadays you're seeing more and more integration between the sell side and the development side. I've spent a lot of years though in enterprise software where you've had teams that are building like large teams, 400 or 500 developers building a large platform, right? Like think of the SAP platform, the Business Object platform, or say the Cognitive Analytics platform, where these teams were often completely disconnected. Like you've got somebody working on performance and scale, or somebody working on quality, or somebody working on like a small chunk of the code. And they would often work kind of in isolation. This is the thing, these are the stories or the sprints I have to deliver on. My job as a product manager back then and running a product management team was trying to ensure that the developers, the engineers, were always able to see what they're building in the context of what the market problem is that they're trying to solve. And the more evidence you bring, the more customer feedback you bring, the more competitive research you bring, the more context you give to that developer so that they're able to be extremely creative in how they create things. Because most engineers I know are freaking smart and really, really creative. Like that's why they're drawn to engineering, because they're super creative. And if you define the problem with all this context, like happily build really interesting things, right? Yeah. So if you just say, build something that does these 10 steps, what's the context? Why am I building these 10 steps, right? If you give them that full context, they may build it in 3 steps because they know a way to do it. That's just going to kind of fundamentally change the workflow. And it'll be better for the customer, better for the partner, and help you sell the product faster.
So you've been perfecting the art of prompts for some time. So after Cognos, you have what is on paper a big jump into a VP role.
Yeah, but in a very small company.
Exactly. So this is what I want to talk about. So, do you think that you would go back and still kind of take this, like, because it did seemingly propel you though, because even though it's to a smaller company, now you're having more leadership responsibility at OLAP at work. So even though it's a smaller company, leadership responsibility, and then you never really look back. It's not like you take a jump back. So I sometimes have younger people come up and ask, like, should I take this bigger role at a smaller company. And I'm always just like, the path is forward.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you at the time?
Well, I mean, I think back in my 20s and 30s, I think my ego was a lot bigger than it is today, right? I think back then I thought, well, the world's my oyster and I will do what I need to do. Um, and I didn't think, if I kind of look back at 1999 when I left Cognos in February and joined OLAP at work, it was two former Cognos employees, and they had left Cognos, I think, 98 or 97, and they saw an opportunity. And when they walked me through that opportunity, I said, hey, it's a good opportunity to join. And again, 50-50. I could have stayed at Cognos and done really, really well career-wise. I think I pissed some people off when I left Cognos in 1999, because there are a lot of people there who were supporting me, making bets on me. And they're like, pretty angry with me for leaving, because I was like, look, Gene, we just put you in this new role. We put a lot of energy and money behind you, and here you are leaving, right? But for me, I saw an opportunity to do something pretty unique, right? It wasn't the title I was going for. It was more an opportunity to do something that the other industry players were not doing in the market. And I think the VP title was nice. It helped catapult my career because I learned a lot. Like, when you're going to a startup, like we were building picnic tables to work at, right? And we were moving furniture, and we moved, I think, 3 times in a year. And we had a lot of tough conversations, a lot of arguments, but we ended up building the business and then selling it within about 14 months to Business Objects. And then that was another 4 or 5 years that were, again, extremely kind of formative, but also I think catapulted my career even more, just because of the international, living in Paris for 3 to 6 years, and then finding a really good mentor, a guy named Dave Kellogg. I mean, I've had some really phenomenal mentors, Rob Rose, Michelle Malot. You probably know both of these people, right? And then at Business Objects, Dave Kellogg and Crispin Reed, 2 amazing, amazing marketers and product leaders and team leaders. And I learned so much, observing them and working with them. And just some incredible times. Dave Kellogg ended up liking me on analyst tours. So he'd do these analyst tours twice a year, one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast. And that's where all the business intelligence and the analytics analysts were located. And he liked me because I stayed on script, and that if he gave me feedback after a session, I would incorporate that into the next session, which may be
away.
30 minutes away, right?
Like a stand-up comedian. You set what worked, what didn't.
Exactly, right. And so I learned a ton working for these people. And I saw Business Objects and Cognos in the late 90s, early 2000s were growing like gangbusters, right? I think Cognos, the BI side of the business, when it might have been 30 million, I think in 1995, 96. And then that side of the business, when I left Cognos the second time as part of IBM, that business was about $1 billion a year, right? In 2014-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's incredible growth.
You saw some stuff.
Yeah.
When you speak of these mentors, how have you kind of viewed mentorship as part of your role in terms of paying it forward?
Yeah.
As time has gone on.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, these mentors, what was good about, say, Rob Rose, Michelle Malot. I mean, I'm probably missing out a bunch of people, so I forgive everybody else who's been a really good mentor as well. It's sort of like kind leadership, really good at, it's just not about the person, it's about the work product, right? And it's about giving the constructive criticism on the work product and holding a very, very high bar, and then sort of coaching you towards getting that high bar. And that's what I think is really sort of this kind leadership. Like any leaders who told me, hey, Gene, you're not being enough of a jerk, most of those leaders were all pushed out of the company within 6 to 12 months of telling me those kinds of things. So I find that now the way I differentiate myself as a leader is I'm more of a servant leader, player coach. Like last night I was awake not awake. I mean, everybody's awake, but it was like from 8 till 11 last night. I was building slides that maybe somebody on the team could have built because we have an analyst meeting on Thursday morning at 8:30. Not that I didn't trust anybody, I didn't want to empower anybody. I'm only in this company. I've only been in this company for a month, and I saw it as an opportunity for me to kind of learn. It's okay. I got to build this content. It's a perfect way to bring all the messaging together, look at the various slides, and try to piece together a story that we will tell this analyst on Thursday morning. And I really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And then kind of giving it back to the team today. They're like, wow, this is fantastic content. I'm going to use it here. I'm going to use it with this sales meeting. I'm going to use it with that prospect. I'm going to use it with this partner. And we're going to use some of that new text and new messaging in a revision that we're planning around our website refresh. So yeah, all that is to say is that, like, what I think, what I've learned from these mentors that I've worked with and how I'm paying it forward is, sharing a lot of the knowledge and the wisdom in terms of how to build processes, how to build sales processes, how to build marketing processes, how to build and support a buyer journey, and make sure that people have the right roles so they could play a significant role in that buyer journey. And then how do I support and coach them and then give them the tools and the resources to be successful, while also being genuinely kind about how I approach it.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to your leadership style in a little bit here, but so after OLAP at Work gets purchased, you made another mega shift. Now to go to SAP, still in a VP role.
Yeah.
So now you've gone from tiny startup to
a big company,
global behemoth. What do you look back on that time in terms of the biggest challenge going from now the inverse? You spend time at Cognos.
Yeah.
You went kind of smaller and then much bigger.
I think that the biggest shift there was more like I had spent some time at Cognos, right, where it was growing and the size of the company was about the same as the Business Objects, which is now SAP, when I joined Business Objects through the acquisition of OLAP at Work. So I didn't feel like I was jumping from, like, I'd already had like the 5 years of experience under my belt of working for a global company of that size. But I think the biggest shift was the cultural shift between Business Objects and Cognos. Cognos was very much a company of consensus. Let's get everybody on board. Let's get everybody to decide, and then we'll execute. Right. Whereas Business Objects was more of a top-down execution, sort of like drill sergeant kind of work, right? And everybody had like MBOs back then. So if you didn't deliver an MBO, you wouldn't get your quarterly bonus. So it was very, very top-down driven, very metrics driven. So culturally, it was quite different from that perspective. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, right? Because if you have consensus, you get an entire team aligned, the execution is so freaking fast, right? Because everybody's aligned, they know what they need to do, they just go do it. A top-down might be, I get it, I got to go do these things in order to make the metrics and the targets, but you might still have some disgruntled, well, I think we should do it this way, I think maybe we should do it that way, I think maybe we
or
should
just not having clarity.
Or just not having clarity, right?
Yeah.
So,
and today, what do you feel your style is? Top-down consensus building?
Well, it's always important to have objectives, so everybody needs to know what the success bar looks like. But I do prefer a consensus style approach, where if somebody has a problem and they come up with a solution, then they're the ones who define the solution, therefore they own the solution and they're accountable for it, right? If you come to me with a problem and I say, well, this is what you should do about it, go do it. If you have any doubts about that, then you don't really own the solution or the execution of that solution. You're just saying, well, hey, Gene said I should go do ABC, so I'll go do ABC. I may have not really bought into it, but I'll try it. If it doesn't work, then it was his solution, right? But if it's my solution to a problem and I'm executing on it and it doesn't work, then I'm accountable for that and I'm learning from that. So, yeah.
So within SAP, you built up enough notoriety, but then you make this move across the pond.
Yeah. Back to Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. Why come home at that time? What was going on?
There's a lot going on. So our first daughter was due in November 2006. And my mother-in-law was also diagnosed with terminal cancer at the time. So we were kind of on the fence as to whether or not we were going to move, because I had just been promoted earlier that spring at Business Objects, and it was in a great role, like really, really great role. But I think we were both feeling a draw back to Canada, family reasons. I didn't have a job or anything, but we knew we had a daughter coming in November.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. We didn't have a place to live, didn't have a job. We just knew that we were moving back to Canada. For some reason, like a lot of people, like we were still young back then. And a lot of people were like, I can't believe you're doing this. You have no job. You got a baby coming. You have no place to live. How are you going to pull this off? And I never really worried about it. I always knew I'd like land on my feet. I mean, there are always moments of worry and doubts. Like, okay, well, it was like thinking about when my first daughter was born November 29th, 2006. And I think, we were on a plane coming back at the end of September from Europe. And like, we weren't sure where we were going to live. We had a house that we did buy that fell apart. The deal fell apart, not the house. The deal fell apart. So then we weren't sure. Then I had to spend a little bit more money, and I didn't have a job, and I needed a mortgage to get this other place because the other thing fell apart. So there's some
no job,
tough moments.
No mortgage.
Yeah, if you don't have a job, there's no mortgage, right? And I was kind of frustrated with the banks. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm Gene.
Obviously, I'm going to get a job.
I'm obviously going to get a job, right? But if you didn't have the job, then you weren't going to get the mortgage, right? So anyway, I ended up finding some work with a friend of mine who hired me on as a consultant. So actually a full-time employee, but he was trying to do startup again. But that helped. I mean, he was like somebody who helped significantly in that transition period. And I've always remain grateful to, it's even Ward Yadanek. He was one of the founders of Olap at Work. He's the one who drew me away from Cognos to go join Olap at Work. And Ward's a phenomenal guy, and he during that period kind of helped me out significantly because he was doing a new startup. But I think the new startup is now more of a consulting project for him than it never really went much further than that. But yeah, so he really helped me out. And then I was hoping to get a job back again at Cognos, but in the fall of 2006, or maybe it was the winter of 2007, they laid off like 300 people. It's like, oh, okay, that's going to be hard for me to get back into that company. And I ended up getting rehired by Cognos again in April of 2007. Yeah. So yeah, it was a bit of a gamble. I was never really worried. Again, you had those periods of moments like, oh, was this the right decision? But luckily we had the new house by the end of October. We were in it. I was working with a ward, and like a month later, like our daughter arrived, and it's been smooth since then.
Yeah,
more or less.
It's been smooth. Yeah, we'll have a different podcast about parenting.
Parenting, yeah.
Girl, dad parenting. I have a lot to learn.
I've got 2 girls.
Yeah, as do I.
There you go.
How we met and connected initially, you moved into this role, Chief Revenue Officer of, or I guess business lead, or at the time. So Pythian had a division called Tehama.
Right.
And you were kind of leading it. And then Tehama would get broken out as its own separate entity, of which you became Chief Revenue Officer. Yeah. It was a wild time for Tehama.
It was.
Pandemic, especially, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I always called myself like an accidental kind of sales leader, right? Just before I go to that role, like most of my career, I've been in a product leadership role, product management, product marketing alliances. But people have always categorized me as somebody who's a customer-led product management guy, very sales-driven, which is both good and bad, right? If you're a sales-driven product leader, that could either be a compliment or an insult, right? What I mean by that is like a compliment could be, hey, yeah, sellers love you because you're helping them close all these deals. But then purists will say, well, look, you're not looking at the market, right? If all you're doing is what the next customer tells you to do, then you're not really building a product that's kind of market driven.
Kind of the anti-Steve Jobs approach.
Yeah, exactly, right. But people always said like you're very sales-led kind of product leader. It just always meant that I wanted to solve problems for customers, and there was a problem directly in front of me. Let's solve that problem. So I kind of ended up moving into a sales leadership role at IBM, which is a very different. If we have time, we could talk more about that. But it's a very different job than being a sales leader in a startup or in a smaller company, because there it's about managing culture and managing spreadsheets and managing give and take, right? It's very different than actually managing the creation of a funnel and a pipeline and moving it through and progressing it to sales opportunities. So after doing that for 3 years, like Paul Valet, who's the former CEO of Pythian and sold it, he's now the CEO of Tehama. He said, "Hey, Gene, I'd love to have you come and be a overall lead for the Tehama division." Then we ended up spinning it out, and I became the CRO. And that was like a wild time, because the whole value of the product was highly secure remote desktops with all sorts of scalability and security features and observability built into the platform. So that meant that, like, if I was working at a bank one day and I had all this observability and like these security lockdowns to my desktop or to my laptop, and I couldn't bring that laptop home, but I still needed to have that same kind of experience where the bank could have 100% guarantee that if my laptop at home gets compromised, that virtual desktop is wiped. It's not there, right? So we ended up having, like, during the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, everybody suddenly has to go work from home. You would have thought that we would have done much better than we did. We did really well. We sold a lot of new users through the pandemic. But one of the things we discovered, though, that during pandemics, people like to go with trusted brands, right? Because it's like, hey, I could just go buy 1,000 seats from Cisco or VMware, and I know it's going to work, right? And I just don't have the time to go look at this new startup.
It's like a saying in my world: nobody gets fired for hiring Deloitte.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody gets fired for hiring IBM or buying from IBM. Yeah. Although that might be different now.
So you have a few years in this role, ride out the pandemic. What do you look back on as the thing that you really had to learn the hard way through that experience?
Well, I think getting back to sort of product market fit, something we mentioned earlier, that is just so fundamentally important, right? If you don't have the right product market fit, then you're not going to scale, right? So that's the biggest kind of learning from my time period at Tehama. Not that I'm saying the product doesn't have product market fit for the use case that it was built and designed for, but to scale that at really big numbers, we were struggling. And either struggling because I couldn't figure it out, personally, being Gene, the leader of the CR of the team, couldn't figure it out, or the product just didn't have it. I think at the end of the day, when I left, I had a lot of doubts about that journey, because I was hoping I would be much more successful there than I was. The product is a great product. Like, the customers who use it love the product. We just needed to find more of those, right? And it was really, really hard to bridge that gap. So now Paul and team, they're running it. It's still a going concern. The product's doing well, and they fixed a lot of go-to-market issues after I left. So I'm not saying that I was a failure there, but I learned a ton, right? I wouldn't say my journey at Tehama was wildly successful, but I wouldn't say it was a failure. I mean, I learned a lot, right? I learned a lot about product market fit, about pricing, but also having come from, if you look at what was happening at the end of 2000s, right, the 2010s, there was a large shift from enterprise software selling perpetual software to selling software as a service, right? To selling recurring revenue. And there's just so much you need to learn around the mechanics of selling on cloud. And your cost model is radically different than selling perpetual software that you kind of throw over the fence once you sign an agreement, and then the customer takes care of the deployment. Well, I mean, they could buy services from you, but ultimately you're delivering it on their hardware, right? So there's not that hardware cost, and when you got that, but when you do have that stack, right, when you're delivering something in the cloud, the complexity of the product and the cost of goods sold changes radically, right? So there are all sorts of different levers that you have and different strategies that you need to put in place in order to be successful in driving the right metrics out of that model, right? So,
well, you've taken that experience and made a massive move.
Yes.
I've been waiting to make this joke. So
I know.
So now at Massive, great Ottawa-based success story.
Yeah.
We're recording from Ottawa today, for those
We are.
who don't know. How did you get connected, and what has the first month been like?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first question on how I got connected. So Rob White, who is an investor and former friend from IBM as well. So Rob and I first met at in like 2007, 2008. He was the um, acquisition integration executive between IBM and Cognos. So he led, I think, because there are a number of different acquisition integration executives. I think he led the product integration side of the equation. So I got to know him then. So he's also the one who kind of attracted me to go to Pythian and then Tehama. But then at Tehama, he was the CFO there, and he's still an investor, CFO at Tehama, I think fractional. But he's also a big investor at MASV. And there's another board member too named Mitch Robinson who I also got to know through my Cognos days, and he's also on the board at MASV. So in the fall of last year, they approached me and said, "Hey, Gene, we're looking for a pivot in our business, right?" Because maybe I'll just talk a bit about MASV, and I'll answer the second question on how the first month has been. So MASV is this incredibly reliable, secure, simple to use way to move extremely large files from one destination to many destinations. And the product itself is like, it probably has like 40,000 plus users on the platform.
But very specific users.
Very specific users, yeah. So the users are creating really large content. And it started in media and entertainment. So think of the content creators that are like, you do like a high quality, high definition 4K, 8K video, an hour of that, and you're over 10 terabytes of data, right? And you need a way to share that with your editor who's going to do some editing.
I often think of when you see certain Disney or less so Pixar, but when you see a Disney movie, that it's actually the Paris production studio that's working on it. Well, you know that Burbank is reviewing the
exactly.
the dailies.
Yeah. The dailies,
like, how are you getting those dailies?
Exactly.
With such large files.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the use cases. So MASV is used like widely across the media and entertainment business, but it's used by a lot of visual designers, visual effects designers. It's used by like the camera operators doing the dailies, right? So one of the things that they can do is they're done shooting. At the end of that day, they need to upload all that video, and then an editor or producer or somebody needs to look at it and then give them feedback quickly so that they can either go fix it the next day and reshoot it, or say, you could, go forward, like the next scene, etc. Right? So it built a strong following just in that initial use case around getting data from camera to cloud, right? To editor to production studio, so they could kind of look at the data. So MASV has now become this incredibly sticky product in the entire workflow, not just the camera to capture, but the entire workflow from initial capture to upload for dailies to sharing that information with visual effects designers, with audio, engineers, to all sorts of different folks that are working in that, all the way to the delivery to the content delivery networks, right? The CDNs. So we're highly used. And the people who use our platform, they are just raving fans. Like the product works. Like it's always reliable. It just works. The kinds of customer support issues that we get are things like, I want to connect this now to my SAML provider or to my SSO provider. And we've built the entire thing on top of an API where people want to then build custom workflows. So those are the kinds of support calls we get. It's like, hey, I want to customize this and embed it with this workflow and make it so that when I'm downloading the file from my Blackmagic camera to the cloud, I then want to be able to automatically upload it to like my Cumulo drive, my Edishare drive, and to my S3 bucket, right? So, and they want to automate that. So we could do that all in one go, but if they want to be able to automate it as part of their custom workflow, then that's where we start getting engaged. But that's the kind of support, and the product just works and it's fast, and it's because of how it's designed and engineered. It's one of the fastest, if not the fastest, large file transfer product on the planet. Right. So the reason why they approached me in the fall is that they've been really busy selling. Like the model has been more of a product-led growth model. You come on board, pay as you go, put your credit card in, you get 15 gigabytes of free usage until you then start getting overages, and then you charge and we pay for the overages. Then from there, people are saying, well, I want to buy like a subscription, and they will self-subscribe to a subscription, or I want to buy credits because you know what, I have a big project coming up, but it's not going to last for a year. I just need to buy credits to transfer large amounts of data for 6 months. So I'm going to buy a big credit. But we saw something, or MASV saw something dramatically changing in their business in the second half of 2024, where really big customers were coming and saying, look, I'm going to spend like 40, 50 grand a year on your platform. It's not just like $1,000 here, $1,000 there. It's going to be like, you're going to be really embedded into our entire workflow. Like there's a deal that we're looking at right now for $70,000 a year, which is like a newer deal for us. We've got another one of our customers. I can't name their name because they haven't allowed us to give their name yet, but they're doing close to $1 million a year on our platform. So when they saw this happening, they said, there's an opportunity here to kind of move upstream and to start selling this with a true enterprise go-to-market kind of sales process. And because I've been doing that most of my life, Rob said, hey, I've got this perfect guy in Ottawa, Gene, who could probably join and help the company pivot without breaking that model, that product-led growth model that pays you go to self-serve drive to subscriptions, to another model that could be complementary and even catapult the growth further, selling to larger enterprise customers, where we're doing outreach and outbound and sales prospecting and marketing campaigns and driving leads that way, and then going to events and like making ourselves more prominent. So that's the reason why they reached out to me. And when I discovered kind of the customer base on the platform and how many new customers are generating every day and the momentum and how it's just like best kept secret in Ottawa, this company that's growing like gangbusters, I said, well, yeah, I want to be part of this journey, right? And then since I've been there, I've been there now for it's like maybe 35 days, 6 weeks or 5 weeks. And so the first week was just kind of meeting the team and getting ready to go to the NAB show in Las Vegas. And at NAB, we booked a meeting room because it was too late to get a booth. It was costly, so we just booked a meeting room. And we had 4 days.
Following the footsteps of the UI TV model.
Exactly. Exactly. So, so the first day, I'm sitting in this meeting room, and we have like some really, really big names coming to the meeting room. And they're asking all these questions like, why aren't we bigger? Like there's so much opportunity in front of us. And we were booked nonstop for 4 days in a row, 65 plus meetings. And our pipeline is just astronomical now coming out of that NAB show. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. It's been really, really good. And I think like coming out of like the first month, thinking, wow, there's like the first month was just me wrapping my head around the revenue model, wrapping around how people buy, what's working in terms of positioning the product in the market. And one of the things I learned from being in this, the first 4 weeks here, and I got this directly like at NAB, is that the bigger customers love the flexibility, the instant and infinite scale of the platform, but also the API. Like the fact that MASV is built entirely on an API makes it so that you can be really flexible about how you embed MASV and make it sticky across your entire workflow and your platform. And all the big meetings we were having, like we had one big meeting with a really, really large brand name customer that I can't mention, but a really, really big daily, like a news daily, TV, weekly articles, podcasts, newspaper, massive company. And we had this tiny meeting room, right? And I'm thinking, like, why are they sending 12 people to this meeting? We can't even fit them into the meeting room. And that sort of includes just how strategic the product is. Right.
Well, it sounds like right place, right time, right fit for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, and I couldn't be happier with the team too. Like there's just like no egos. They just want to work, roll up their sleeves, get things done. Everybody's having fun, right? Because it's great. Like, I think I could probably say this, but we probably, since I joined, and I can't take any credit for this because I've only been there for 5 weeks, but since I joined, um, we signed probably 19 new deals not driven by self-serve
Right.
in 5 weeks.
Well, you should take the credit.
Take the credit for helping the team get the deal signed because I now have signing authority. But this is awesome momentum, right? So I'm joining at like a really, really good time. Yeah.
If you think about this, like these mentors that you had who kind of instilled kindness as a leadership philosophy, you have been described as a compassionate leader yourself. I know a few people who know you, and I think they would agree with this.
Good to know.
So they paid me to say
Yeah.
that. But
I'll have to pay them later.
yeah.
Give them back.
What do you think is the secret? Is it just personality? How much is that intentional? Is it, the bike ride to work calms the mind?
What's the secret for? Well, it's funny. My Instagram handle is the kindness gene. I don't really publish much outside of Instagram.
You're about to become famous, so
yeah. But there we go. Yeah, it's mostly cycling stuff and skiing, and the odd cat photo. But what drives that sort of side of me? I think it's just having had the experiences that I've had as a kid. I appreciate that. Everybody's on their own journey, right? You don't know what's happening behind what you see on the surface, right? You don't know what history they come from. You don't know what's happening at home. You don't know what issues and challenges that they're dealing with. But all you have is like what's in front of you right then and there, and you're trying to tackle an issue. And you want to be able to get all that other BS or trauma off the table and say, let's just focus on this issue, right? And the kinder that you could be and the more compassionate about all that other stuff going on, the more you can get the individuals to focus on, well, hey, let's just get this thing solved, the thing that's here in front of us right now. Because all that other stuff is still going to be there when you go home. It's still there in your history. Yeah. And you just need to be aware of that. I don't know, I think that's probably why I'm driven to just be more sensitive to what somebody may be going through, because you never know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, speaking of that childhood, if you were to go back and join yourself on one of those forest bike rides, and be able to kind of paint the picture of where you would wind up, the adventures and experiences that you've had, raising a family where you get to be in control of the energy level and leading with compassion and kindness, what do you think young Gene would have to say about where they're about to head?
Looking at myself back when I was 7 or 8 or that age, I don't know. That's a great question. I've heard these kinds of questions like on podcasts and other things before. I never really thought about what I would say. I'd probably just say keep going, right? Just keep focused, believe in yourself. But probably would have said, now that I know, trust others more. Learn to trust others earlier in your life. Because I think it took me a long time to feel like I could trust other people, right? I think my wife and I probably would have married sooner had I not learned to trust her sooner. Because we were together for a very long time, but we had issues. It wasn't more like trust, like, fidelity. It was more like emotional trust.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you painting the picture of that life growing up, and I think it's a really powerful takeaway to see someone like you ooze the like of all the. I'm finding myself I'm like a high energy, like chaotic person, and just from your communication style to your storytelling to the experiences that you had, it's calming to even just be around. So I can imagine the teams that you've had the opportunity to work with, and why. I think another takeaway from this conversation, especially for younger listeners or viewers, is, you were in your 20s at Cognos, and the number of people who you met then, who you've referenced throughout the rest of that journey, was at least 4 or 5 in this
Yeah.
in this interview in terms of how you've gotten to where you are now. So
Right.
I think there's some amazing takeaways, and I'm so appreciative of you doing this. And yeah, maybe we'll do it again after the next 19 deals get signed.
Exactly.
and you get the permission, and we'll do a totally different show where you give the ins and outs of how to sell to companies that rhyme with socks.
Exactly.
At the NAB.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the conversation as well. I didn't know, I didn't do any prep at all. You mentioned something just in the last your closing comments. Like, I've never seen myself as this like dynamic sort of presenter or speaker. I'm just like this calm guy, and I was like hoping that would come across well, because some people are very dynamic and they come across like great speakers and great storytellers. I'm just like this calm guy.
Yeah, which I'm sure is disorienting, especially to certain customer demographics where they're just like, this guy isn't even here to sell me anything. So I agree. But listen, thank you so much. Best of luck at Massive.
Thank you.
I hope everyone checks it out. In the show notes, we'll include links. You got large files to transfer.
We do.
If you need to integrate into your workflow, they've got the API. Contact Gene and get it set up. Spend your millions.
Yes.
That's the tagline.
Millions
There you
to
go.
Massive.
See, you can. I'll
There
send
you
the
go.
check.
Yes.
The invoice later.
Check later.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.